Racist woman calls Harasses a black tattooed dad during flight. What happened made her regret it. Sir, I specifically requested not to be seated next to someone like him. The woman's voice cuts through the ambient noise of the crowded airplane cabin, sharp and deliberately loud. Several heads turn toward the commotion in row 17. Marcus Johnson, a broad-shouldered man with intricate tattoos visible beneath the short sleeves of his polo shirt, keeps his eyes forward, jaw clenched. His large hands rest protectively on the armrests of his middle seat, the gold wedding band on his left hand catching the overhead light. In the window seat beside him, his 7-year-old daughter Zoe shrinks into herself, her small fingers clutching her stuffed elephant tighter. The flight attendant, a slim woman in her 40s named Sarah Chen, maintains her professional smile, though her eyes harden almost imperceptibly. Ma'am, all of our seats are assigned. If you'd like to take your aisle seat, we can get everyone settled for takeoff. The woman mid-60s, immaculately dressed in a beige pantsuit with a pearl necklace that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, huffs dramatically. I am not sitting next to that person. Her eyes flick dismissively over Marcus's dark skin and tattooed arms. Surely you can find me another seat. Look at him, he's clearly not appropriate company. Marcus's shoulders tense further, but he remains silent, his eyes now locked on the seat in front of him. He takes a measured breath, too aware of his daughter beside him, too aware of the eyes on them, too aware of what happens when a large black man shows any emotion in public. What happens in the next few minutes will change multiple lives forever. But to understand the full impact of this confrontation at 30,000 feet, we need to go back to how this flight began, and the lives that intersected in row 17 of Flight 2187 from Chicago to San Francisco. If you're wondering how this story unfolds and the unexpected ways these lives will connect, stay with me. This journey has only just begun, and what happens next might surprise you. 4 hours earlier, Marcus Johnson stands in his Chicago apartment, checking his carry-on one last time. The morning sunlight streams through the bay windows, illuminating dust motes that dance in the air. The apartment is quiet save for the distant sound of morning traffic 17 floors below and the occasional creak of the building's old pipes. Marcus runs his hand over his closely cropped hair, feeling the slight stubble beneath his palm. The mirror reflects a man just shy of his 35th birthday, with eyes that have seen more than they should have at his age, deep brown eyes currently shadowed with fatigue and worry. His daughter Zoe bounces on her toes beside him, clutching her stuffed elephant named Ellie. The elephant, once bright white, now bears the grayish tint of a well-loved toy, its trunk slightly frayed at the end from years of anxious twisting between small fingers. Zoe's braided hair, meticulously done last night by Marcus himself after 3 YouTube tutorials and considerable patience, is adorned with colorful beads that click together with each enthusiastic movement. "Daddy, will Grandma have cookies when we get there? The chocolate ones with the gooey middle?" Zoe asks, her voice carrying that particular pitch of childhood excitement that can pierce through any adult preoccupation. Marcus smiles down at his daughter, momentarily forgetting the weight that's been pressing on his chest for weeks. In these moments, these bright, perfect moments with Zoe, he can almost believe that everything is normal, that their family hasn't fractured, that he isn't constantly fighting to keep despair at bay. "You know she will, sunshine. Grandma always has your favorite cookies ready," he says, reaching down to adjust the collar of her purple shirt, her favorite color this month, having recently displaced pink in her affections. He doesn't tell Zoe that this trip is more than a simple visit to see his mother. He doesn't mention that the envelope in his bag contains divorce papers from her mother, Aisha, who left 6 months ago for a temporary break that has stretched into half a year of painful silence. He doesn't say that his mother's recent health scare, a minor heart episode the doctors called it, though nothing about your mother clutching her chest in pain could ever be classified as minor, has left him terrified of losing another pillar in his life. Some burdens aren't meant for 7-year-old shoulders. Instead, he zips up the suitcase and makes a silly face that sends Zoe into a fit of giggles, the sound echoing off the walls of their apartment like a balm to his wounded soul. "Ready for an adventure, co-pilot?" "Ready, Captain Daddy?" Zoe salutes, her small face serious for a moment before breaking into another smile that reveals the gap where her front tooth recently vacated its post, leaving behind a tiny window of childhood that Marcus wishes he could freeze in time. Marcus checks his watch, a birthday gift from his architectural firm colleagues when he made partner last year. The sleek timepiece looks incongruous against his tattooed arm, where intricate geometric patterns flow from wrist to shoulder, telling the story of his heritage in lines and symbols that most people never bother to understand. The tattoos had been a multi-year project, started in college as a way to reclaim and celebrate the cultural identity that his private school education had often made him feel pressured to minimize. Each pattern, each symbol had meaning: his father's Ghanaian heritage, his mother's love of education, his own journey through life's labyrinth of challenges and triumphs. The watch reads 8:15 a.m. Their flight isn't until 11:40, but Marcus has always believed in being overprepared, especially when traveling with a child. In his mind, he runs through his mental checklist. Zoe's favorite snacks, her allergy medication, the tablet loaded with games and movies for the flight, an extra change of clothes in case of spills or accidents, his own book for the rare quiet moments, and of course, Ellie the elephant, without whom no journey could possibly commence. "Let's do one more bathroom check before we go," Marcus suggests, knowing from experience that a 7-year-old's "I don't need to go" often transforms miraculously into an urgent "I really need to go" the moment the taxi pulls away from the curb. Zoe sighs dramatically, a gesture so reminiscent of her mother that Marcus feels a fresh pang of loss but dutifully heads to the bathroom. While she's occupied, Marcus quickly checks his phone. No new messages from Aisha. He's not sure whether he's relieved or disappointed. Their last exchange 3 weeks ago had been cordial but distant, like communication between casual acquaintances rather than people who had once promised to spend their lives together. "Just confirming we're flying out tomorrow to see Mom. Do you want to FaceTime with Zoe while we're there?" The response had come hours later. "Sure, let me know when's good. Tell your mom I said hi. Tell your mom I said hi." As if Evelyn Johnson hadn't been Aisha's mother-in-law for 9 years, hadn't held her hand through 26 hours of labor when Zoe was born, hadn't welcomed her into the family with open arms and unwavering support. The casual dismissal of that bond hurt almost as much as Aisha's absence from their daughter's life. As they leave the apartment, Mrs. Abernathy from next door opens her door, perfect timing as always. The elderly woman has been a surrogate grandmother to Zoe since they moved into the building 5 years ago, when the high-rise was still new and their marriage still felt solid. With her cloud of white hair and perpetually flour-dusted hands, Mrs. Abernathy represents a constant in their ever-changing lives, a neighbor who became family through small kindnesses and reliable presence. "There's my favorite neighbor," Mrs. Abernathy croons, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. "I've got something for your trip." She hands Zoe a small paper bag that the child opens eagerly to find homemade chocolate chip cookies, still slightly warm from the oven. "Thank you, Mrs. A." Zoe beams, carefully placing the bag in her little backpack decorated with stars and planets, a reflection of her current fascination with space, sparked by a school field trip to the planetarium last month. "You take care of your daddy, you hear?" Mrs. Abernathy says, then turns to Marcus with eyes that see more than he sometimes wishes they would. "And you call me when you land, young man. These old bones don't rest easy until I know you two are safe." What she doesn't say, but what Marcus hears anyway: "I worry about you both. I see how hard this is. You're not alone." Marcus nods, touched as always by her concern. "Yes, ma'am, we'll call as soon as we touch down." Mrs. Abernathy pats his arm, her cool, dry palm resting briefly on his skin. "You're doing just fine, Marcus," she says quietly, while Zoe is distracted by reorganizing her backpack to accommodate the cookies. "Better than fine. That girl is lucky to have you." The simple validation nearly undoes him. He swallows hard against the sudden tightness in his throat and manages a grateful smile. "We're lucky to have you too, Mrs. A." The ride to O'Hare is uneventful, though Marcus notices Zoe growing quieter as they approach the airport, her initial excitement giving way to a more contemplative mood. This is the pattern: lately bursts of normal childhood enthusiasm followed by periods of withdrawal and worry. The child psychologist Marcus consulted 2 months ago had assured him this was normal for children experiencing family disruption, but the knowledge doesn't make it any easier to witness. At a red light, he glances in the rearview mirror. "You okay back there, sunshine?" Zoe nods, but her fingers worry at Ellie's worn ear, a sure sign she's anxious about something. She stares out the window for a long moment before asking in a small voice, "What if Mommy calls while we're gone?" The question pierces Marcus's heart. How many times has Zoe run to check his phone when it rings, hope lighting her face, only to have that light extinguished when it's just a colleague or a telemarketer? How many bedtimes has she insisted on keeping the ringer volume high just in case? Then she'll leave a message, and we'll call her right back when we land, he answers, keeping his voice light and reassuring. He doesn't mention that Aisha hasn't called in 3 weeks, that her texts have grown increasingly infrequent and detached. And you can tell her all about our big airplane adventure. This seems to satisfy Zoe, who returns to watching the city pass by outside her window. Marcus grips the steering wheel tighter, the muscles in his forearms flexing beneath the tattoos. 6 months of being both mom and dad. 6 months of fielding Zoe's questions about when mommy is coming home. 6 months of dying a little inside each time she asks. The divorce papers in his bag feel like they weigh 100 pounds. Aisha had sent them via her lawyer last week, just to get the process started, the accompanying letter had explained clinically. Marcus hasn't signed them yet. Not because he harbors illusions about reconciliation. Aisha has made it clear that her new life in Seattle, with her new job and presumably her new relationship, though she hasn't officially confirmed this, Instagram is a merciless revealer of truths, is permanent. No, he hasn't signed because doing so feels like the final admission of failure, the last nail in the coffin of the life they had planned together. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that sometimes people just stop loving each other? That sometimes the person who helped create you decides that other things, career advancement, personal fulfillment, or simply the absence of the familiar matter more than daily bedtime stories and Saturday morning pancakes. Marcus doesn't have those answers, so he does what he can. He shows up, every day with all the love and consistency he can muster. At the airport, Marcus navigates them efficiently through check-in and security. He's used to the subtle shifts in expression when TSA officers see him, a large black man with tattoos, and then notice his daughter and his professional attire. He's used to the extra scrutiny, the slightly longer pause as they examine his ID, comparing the photo to his face with unnecessary thoroughness. He's learned to move through the world with deliberate calm, to keep his voice soft, his demeanor non-threatening. These are lessons he learned early from his father, a surgeon who, despite his credentials and position, was often mistaken for an orderly or janitor in his own hospital. "Keep your dignity," his father used to tell him. "Never let them see that it affects you, but never forget that it does." Those lessons have served him well in his career at Horizon Designs, where he's often the only black architect in meetings with clients who sometimes look to his white colleagues for confirmation of his statements, even when he's the lead on the project. They've served him in parent-teacher conferences, where he's had to establish himself as a serious, involved father rather than the stereotype some expect. They serve him now as he guides Zoe through the crowded terminal, hyper-aware of how others perceive them. "Daddy, that man is looking at your arms," Zoe whispers as they wait at the gate. She points to an older gentleman who quickly averts his gaze when Marcus looks up. Marcus has grown accustomed to the stares his tattoos attract. Some are merely curious, others disapproving, but all represent a judgment made without knowledge or context. He's learned to use these moments as teaching opportunities for Zoe to help her understand the complexity of human interaction and perception. "People are curious about art, sunshine," Marcus explains patiently, his voice gentle but matter-of-fact. "Remember how we talked about my tattoos? They tell the story of our family all the way back to great-great-grandma and grandpa. Like a storybook on your skin," Zoe nods, repeating what he's told her before. She traces a pattern on his forearm with her small finger. "This one is from Ghana, where Grandpa's family came from. And this one," she points to a stylized owl near his wrist, "is for wisdom and learning like Grandma teaches." "Exactly right," Marcus smiles, proud of her remembering. "Every mark tells part of our story." He doesn't explain the other looks, the ones that aren't curious but judgmental or fearful. He doesn't tell her about the woman who clutched her purse tighter when he entered an elevator, or the security guard who followed him through an upscale store, or the countless small indignities that have peppered his life since childhood. She'll learn about those too soon as it is. Instead, he buys her a small cup of ice cream from a nearby kiosk, and they spend the remaining time before boarding playing "I Spy" and making up stories about where the other travelers might be going. Zoe decides that the businessman in the crisp suit is secretly a spy on a mission to recover stolen jewels, while the elderly couple holding hands are time travelers from the future checking that history is unfolding as it should. Marcus watches his daughter's animated expressions as she crafts these elaborate narratives, marveling at her creativity and resilience. Children adapt, the psychologist had told him. They find ways to process their changing world through play and imagination. Seeing Zoe's enthusiasm now, he allows himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, they're going to be okay. Where are you watching from today? Take a moment to let us know in the comments below. Your perspective adds to our community's tapestry of experiences. Across the terminal, Patricia Winters adjusts her pearl necklace and checks her reflection in her compact mirror. At 67, she takes pride in her appearance, designer clothes, perfectly maintained blonde bob, and makeup that subtly defies her age. The first-class lounge is relatively empty this morning, just how she prefers it. She's seated in her usual spot, a leather armchair near the window that overlooks the tarmac, but far enough from the bar to avoid conversation with chatty businessmen who might recognize her from charity circuit events. Patricia has spent a lifetime cultivating an image of affluent respectability. The daughter of a banking executive and a social climbing mother, she learned early that appearance and connections were currency in their world. She married well. Richard Winters had been 20 years her senior, but possessed the fortune, social standing, and appropriate political leanings her parents approved of. Their 38 years of marriage had been more business partnership than romance, but Patricia had never expected otherwise. She had fulfilled her role: hostess, supporter, mother to their only child Caroline, and curator of the Winters family image. Richard's death 3 years ago had changed less in her daily life than outsiders might expect. They had lived largely separate existences under the same roof for decades, united primarily by social obligations and shared conservative values. His absence meant fewer charity dinners to attend, and more freedom to redecorate their San Francisco mansion without debate. But otherwise, Patricia's life continued much as before, maintained by old money, family connections, and the precisely calibrated social calendar that had structured her days since her 20s. "More coffee, Mrs. Winters?" The attendant approaches with a fresh pot. The young woman's blonde hair is pulled back in a regulation ponytail, her uniform perfectly pressed. Patricia has seen her before on previous trips through O'Hare. Melissa, her name tag reads. "Please." Patricia extends her cup, noticing with displeasure a small chip on her French manicure. She makes a mental note to have it fixed immediately upon arrival in San Francisco. "And perhaps a mimosa as well. It's never too early when one is traveling." The attendant nods and moves away. Patricia returns to reviewing the quarterly reports from the foundation she chairs. The Winters Family Foundation, established by her late husband Richard, provides scholarships to deserving students, a term Patricia has her own particular definition for. Under her stewardship, the foundation has maintained Richard's vision, supporting primarily students who reflect their values and background, who will uphold the traditions they consider vital to American society. Her phone buzzes with a text from her daughter, Caroline. The relationship between mother and daughter has always been complicated. Caroline, now 42, has persistently defied Patricia's expectations, from her choice to attend Berkeley rather than her parents' East Coast alma maters, to her decision to work in nonprofit management instead of joining the family business interests, to her increasingly liberal political views that cause tension at every family gathering. "Are you on your way? The caterer needs final approval on the menu." Patricia sighs. Caroline's fundraising gala is the reason for this trip to San Francisco, though Patricia would have preferred to send a check rather than attend in person. These events have become insufferably politically correct in recent years, with Caroline's organization focusing on educational equity and inclusive community development, terms that make Patricia's teeth clench with their progressive implications. "Just boarding soon. Tell them whatever you prefer is fine." She sends the text, knowing full well that Caroline will agonize over the decision anyway. Her daughter has always been painfully indecisive, a trait Patricia blames on Caroline's father, who coddled the girl shamelessly. Richard had seen their daughter's soft heart as endearing. Patricia viewed it as a weakness in a world that rewards strength and certainty. The boarding announcement for first-class passengers interrupts her thoughts. Patricia gathers her belongings, her Hermes handbag, cashmere wrap, and the latest issue of Town and Country, and makes her way to the gate, bypassing the line with practiced entitlement. The gate agent, a young man with a neat beard and tired eyes, greets her by name, a small perk of her frequent flyer status. "Good morning, Mrs. Winters. We've got you in 3A today." Patricia frowns, consulting her boarding pass. "I believe there's been a mistake." "I always sit in 2A, the agent taps at his computer, his expression professionally neutral. "I apologize, but 2A is occupied on this flight. I assure you 3A has the same amenities. Who is in 2A? Surely they can be moved." Patricia's voice carries the absolute certainty of someone unaccustomed to having her preferences questioned. The agent's smile tightens almost imperceptibly. I'm afraid that passenger checked in early and is already boarded, but 3A is fine. Patricia cuts him off. 3A will do. She doesn't add this time, but it hangs in the air between them. As she boards the plane, Patricia nods to the familiar flight attendants who greet her by name. She settles into 3A, arranging her belongings with the efficiency of someone who flies weekly. Her cashmere wrap is folded precisely and placed within easy reach. Her handbag is positioned under the seat in front of her, angled for convenient access. Her reading materials are organized in order of priority. The seat beside her remains empty, another perk she's come to expect. First class is rarely full on this midweek flight. But then a young man in an expensive suit takes the seat beside her, offering a brief nod before becoming absorbed in his tablet. Patricia purses her lips but says nothing. At least he appears to be the quiet type. As the rest of first class fills, Patricia observes her fellow passengers with the keen eye of someone who has spent a lifetime categorizing people according to their social value. The older gentleman across the aisle is clearly old money, his loafers well-worn but expensive, his demeanor quietly confident. The middle-aged woman 2 rows ahead is new money, too many flashy accessories, too eager to be noticed. Patricia makes these assessments automatically, the social calculus as natural to her as breathing. When the announcement comes that boarding is complete, Patricia allows herself a moment of satisfaction. Another smooth departure. Another journey where her status ensures comfort and priority. This is the world as it should be: predictable, hierarchical, and properly respectful of established order. She has no idea that in less than an hour, this carefully maintained worldview will be dramatically challenged by a chance encounter with a tattooed father and his young daughter in row 17. Back at the gate, the final boarding call goes out for Flight 2187 to San Francisco. Marcus holds Zoe's hand as they join the line for general boarding, Zone 4. Around them, passengers shift impatiently, the universal airport dance of hurry up and wait evident in their postures and expressions. Can I have the window seat, Daddy? Please. Zoe looks up at him with wide, hopeful eyes bouncing slightly on her toes. I want to see the clouds up close. Of course, sunshine, you're the official cloud counter today, Marcus says, handing their boarding passes to the gate agent, who scans them with mechanical efficiency before waving them through. As they make their way down the jetway, Marcus feels his phone vibrate in his pocket. He checks it quickly, hoping against hope that it might be Aisha. Instead, it's a text from his mother. Can't wait to see my babies. Flight on time? He texts back a quick confirmation before pocketing his phone. The familiar weight of disappointment settles in his chest. He's been trying to train himself not to expect Aisha's calls or messages, to stop the instinctive leap of hope whenever his phone signals an incoming communication. 6 months should be enough time to break the habit, but his heart hasn't received the memo. On board, they make their way down the narrow aisle, navigating the obstacle course of protruding elbows, backpacks, and passengers attempting to stow oversized luggage in the overhead bins. Zoe clutches Ellie in one hand and her father's fingers in the other, her eyes wide as she takes in the interior of the plane. When they reach row 17, Marcus helps Zoe into the window seat and stows their bags in the overhead compartment before settling into the middle seat. He's too broad-shouldered for the confined space, and he automatically adopts the posture he's perfected on previous flights, shoulders slightly hunched, arms pulled in, making himself as compact as possible to avoid intruding on neighboring passengers' space. Look, Daddy, there's a little TV. Zoe points excitedly to the screen on the back of the seat in front of her. That's right. You can watch movies once we're in the air, Marcus explains, helping her buckle her seatbelt and showing her how to adjust it. But first we have to listen to the safety instructions. Like what to do if we have to swim? Zoe asks, her expression serious. Marcus smiles. Exactly. It's important to know what to do in an emergency, even though planes are very, very safe. They sit quietly as the plane continues to fill. Marcus pulls out a book. He's been trying to finish the same novel for months now, stealing moments to read between work and parenting responsibilities. It's a historical fiction set during the Harlem Renaissance, recommended by a colleague, and he's been enjoying it when he can find the time to focus. Zoe peers out the window, narrating what she sees to Ellie in whispered tones. The suitcases are going into the plane's tummy, Ellie, but don't worry, our special bags are right above us. Daddy put them there, and he's super strong, so they won't fall. Marcus listens to her with one ear, smiling at her imagination. His daughter has always had a gift for storytelling, creating elaborate narratives for her toys and inventing complex scenarios during playtime. Her kindergarten teacher had commented on it during their last conference, suggesting that they encourage this creative streak. She processes the world through stories, Ms. Garcia had explained. It's how she makes sense of things, especially difficult things. The relative peace is shattered when a commotion erupts at the front of their section. A voice rises above the ambient noise of boarding, sharp with entitlement and annoyance. "What do you mean my seat has been changed? I specifically requested an aisle seat near the front." Marcus doesn't look up, used to the entitlement that often surfaces during air travel. He turns a page in his book, half listening as a flight attendant patiently explains something about weight distribution and necessary changes. "This is completely unacceptable. I am a platinum member." The voice grows closer until it stops right beside row 17. Marcus glances up to see an older woman glaring at the seat number, then at him, her expression shifting from annoyance to something else entirely, something colder, more visceral. It's a look he knows all too well, one that says, "You don't belong here." And that brings us back to where our story began, Patricia Winters staring down at Marcus Johnson and his daughter, declaring loudly that she shouldn't have to sit next to someone like him. The cabin seems to hold its collective breath. Sarah Chen, the flight attendant, maintains her professional demeanor despite the obvious racism unfolding before her. At 39, Sarah has witnessed countless variations of this scene during her 15 years in the air. As a Chinese-American woman, she's experienced her own share of prejudice from passengers, though usually in more subtle forms. "Ma'am, I understand you're disappointed about the seat change, but I'm afraid all other seats are occupied. We need to complete boarding to depart on schedule." Sarah's voice is firm but calm, the result of extensive training and practice in de-escalating tense situations. Patricia's nostrils flare. Her pearl necklace seems to gleam more brightly against her flushed skin as she draws herself up to her full height. "This is absolutely unacceptable. I want to speak to the captain." A few rows ahead, a middle-aged white man in a business suit half turns in his seat, watching the scene with a frown. His name is David Keller, a marketing executive from Portland who has spent the past 3 days in Chicago at a conference. He's tired and looking forward to getting home to his wife and teenage sons, but the confrontation unfolding behind him has captured his attention and sparked a familiar discomfort, the awkward position of the bystander, unsure whether to intervene. Behind them, a college-aged girl with purple hair takes out her earbuds, her expression darkening as she realizes what's happening. Alicia Rodriguez, 21, is flying to San Francisco to visit her girlfriend. The daughter of Mexican immigrants, she's grown up witnessing the subtle and not-so-subtle manifestations of prejudice. The woman's thinly veiled racism triggers a protective anger in her, and she sits forward, ready to speak up if necessary. Marcus remains still, his book now closed in his lap. He's been here before, the object of someone's prejudice, expected to either explode in anger, confirming their bias, or accept the humiliation silently. Neither option sits well with him, but with Zoe beside him, her small body tense and confused, his choices feel limited. This is the calculus that people like Patricia Winters never have to perform. How do I respond to this degradation while protecting my child? How do I maintain my dignity without reinforcing stereotypes? How do I navigate this moment in a way that doesn't escalate a situation that could quickly become dangerous for someone who looks like me? "Sir, would you prefer an aisle seat?" Sarah asks Marcus quietly, trying to offer him an escape from the situation. Her dark eyes communicate an unspoken apology, one marginalized person recognizing another's predicament. Before he can answer, Patricia scoffs. "Oh, so he gets special treatment? I've been a loyal customer for 20 years. Daddy," Zoe's voice is small, uncertain. She's pressed herself against the window, Ellie clutched to her chest like a shield. "Did we do something wrong?" The question breaks something open inside Marcus. The accumulated weight of 1,000 similar moments when he's swallowed his response for the sake of peace, for the sake of not confirming stereotypes, for the sake of safety, suddenly feels unbearable. Not because of what Patricia thinks of him, her opinion means nothing, but because of what this moment is teaching his daughter about her worth in the world. He turns to Zoe, deliberately ignoring Patricia and speaking in a clear, steady voice that carries just far enough for those nearby to hear. "No, sunshine, we didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups forget their manners and say unkind things. But that's not about us, that's about them." The simple truth, delivered without anger but with unshakable dignity, causes several nearby passengers to nod in agreement. The businessman a few rows ahead turns fully around now, making direct eye contact with Patricia. "Ma'am," he says loudly enough for those around them to hear, "I'd be happy to trade seats with you if sitting next to this gentleman and his daughter is somehow a problem for you." The offer is framed politely, but the subtext is clear. Your behavior is the problem here, not these people. Patricia's face flushes deeper. That's not what she falters, suddenly aware of the growing disapproval surrounding her. The script has flipped unexpectedly. Instead of others acknowledging and accommodating her discomfort about sitting next to Marcus, they're identifying her as the source of disruption. "No need," Marcus says, his voice level. "My daughter and I are comfortable right where we are. We're not going to let someone else's issues disrupt our trip to see Grandma, are we, Zoe?" Zoe, taking her cue from her father's calm demeanor, shakes her head. "No, Daddy. Grandma's waiting with cookies." A ripple of quiet laughter passes through the nearby rows. Patricia stands frozen in the aisle, the power of her entitlement suddenly deflated as she realizes how many disapproving eyes are now on her. Sarah, the flight attendant, steps in smoothly. "Ma'am, I need you to take your seat now or I'll have to call the captain, which will delay our departure." With no graceful exit available, Patricia stiffly takes her seat beside Marcus, her body angled as far away from him as the confines of economy class allow. She pulls out her phone, tapping furiously as though sending urgent messages, though the device is clearly in airplane mode. The tension in the cabin gradually dissipates as boarding completes and the flight attendants begin their safety demonstration. Marcus helps Zoe follow along, making sure she knows what to do in an emergency. Patricia stares stonily ahead, seemingly determined to pretend her seatmates don't exist. As the plane begins to taxi, Zoe's small voice pipes up again. "Daddy, can I have a cookie? My tummy feels funny." Marcus recognizes the request for what it is, not hunger but anxiety seeking comfort. He reaches for Zoe's backpack under the seat in front of her, extracting the paper bag Mrs. Abernathy gave them. He hands Zoe a cookie, then, after a moment's hesitation, holds the bag toward Patricia. "Would you care for a homemade chocolate chip cookie?" he asks, his voice neutral. "My neighbor made them fresh this morning." The gesture isn't about forgiveness or even kindness exactly. It's about modeling for Zoe the person he wants her to become, someone who doesn't allow others' prejudice to diminish her capacity for civility. It's about showing her that they have the power to set the tone of an interaction, regardless of how it begins. Patricia glances at the offering, momentarily startled by the unexpected courtesy. For a brief second, something flickers across her face, something almost like shame before her features harden again. "No, thank you," she says stiffly, turning away. Marcus shrugs and returns the bag to Zoe's backpack. As the plane accelerates down the runway, Zoe grips her father's hand tightly, her eyes wide with excitement and trepidation. Marcus gives her fingers a reassuring squeeze. "Here we go, sunshine. Adventure awaits." The plane lifts off, leaving the ground behind along with, perhaps, some of the weight of preconceptions and prejudice that had threatened to make this journey unbearable before it even began. "I can see the bridge, the red one from your pictures." "That's the Golden Gate Bridge," Marcus confirms, leaning over slightly to share her view. "And somewhere down there is Grandma's house." "With cookies," Zoe adds solemnly, causing Marcus to chuckle. "With cookies," he confirms. "Chocolate chip with the gooey centers, just like you asked for." The landing is smooth, the wheels touching down with barely a bump, a stark contrast to the turbulent journey. As the plane taxis to the gate, passengers begin the familiar ritual of gathering belongings and checking phones for missed messages. The cabin fills with the sounds of seatbelts unbuckling, overhead bins opening, and the collective murmur of people eager to reach their destinations. Patricia attempts to reach for her carry-on in the overhead bin but flinches in pain, her injured shoulder clearly protesting the movement. Without being asked, Marcus stands and retrieves her bag, placing it carefully on her empty seat. "There you go." Patricia hesitates, then nods stiffly. "Thank you." The acknowledgement is small but significant, a departure from her earlier behavior, a grudging recognition of his humanity. As they wait for the rows ahead to clear, Zoe turns to Patricia with the unfiltered friendliness of childhood. "I hope your arm feels better. When I fell off the swing and hurt my knee, Daddy put a cold thingy on it and then we had ice cream. Ice cream always helps." Patricia appears momentarily flustered by the direct address. Children have rarely figured prominently in her life. Even with her own daughter, she had left most of the day-to-day parenting to nannies. She's unaccustomed to the straightforward communication of a 7-year-old, with its lack of pretense or agenda. I thank you, she manages, her voice lacking its earlier edge. As they finally exit the plane, Marcus holding Zoe's hand and carrying their backpacks, Patricia falls in a step behind them. In the jetway, she clears her throat. Excuse me. Marcus turns, his expression neutral, prepared for anything from further rudeness to grudging civility. Patricia begins, then stops, seemingly at a loss for words. The flow of deplaning passengers moves around them like a stream around rocks. I wanted to say, about earlier. Before you see how this conversation unfolds, take a moment to make sure you're subscribed to our channel. Click that button now so you don't miss the resolution to this powerful encounter. Patricia Winters has never been good at apologies. Throughout her 67 years, she's found it easier to double down or simply change the subject when confronted with her mistakes. In her social circle, direct acknowledgement of error is often seen as weakness rather than strength of character. But standing in the jetway of San Francisco International Airport, facing the man she had so callously insulted, and his innocent daughter, the words she's avoided her entire life suddenly seem necessary. I behaved poorly, she finally says, her voice low enough that only Marcus and Zoe can hear. My comments were inappropriate. It's not quite an apology, but for Patricia, it's monumental. Marcus studies her face for a moment, recognizing the effort this admission costs her. He sees beyond the perfectly applied makeup and carefully maintained expression to the vulnerability beneath, the discomfort of someone whose worldview has been challenged. Thank you for saying that, he responds, neither accepting nor rejecting her quasi-apology. His tone is measured, acknowledging her effort without offering absolution she hasn't quite earned. I hope your shoulder feels better. He turns to go, but Zoe tugs on his hand. Daddy, we should give her Mrs. A's cookies for her arm. Remember, sweets make hurts better. The suggestion reflects Zoe's uncomplicated approach to reconciliation. Physical pain and emotional hurt alike can be soothed with simple kindness. Marcus hesitates, then reaches into Zoe's backpack and extracts the paper bag, now containing just 2 cookies. He offers it to Patricia. My daughter thinks you need these more than we do. Patricia stares at the bag, then at Zoe's earnest face. Something shifts in her expression, a softening around the eyes, a slight tremble of her meticulously lipsticked mouth. The simple gesture has pierced through decades of carefully constructed barriers, reaching a part of her that seldom sees daylight. She accepts the bag with her good arm, handling it as though it contains something far more precious than homemade cookies. That's very kind of you, she says, addressing Zoe directly. Thank you. As they part ways at the end of the jetway, Patricia heading toward the priority baggage claim and Marcus and Zoe toward the regular terminal. None of them realize that their brief, turbulent connection is far from over. In the baggage claim area, Marcus checks his phone and finds several messages waiting. One from his office about a client meeting rescheduled for after his return, another from Mrs. Abernathy asking if they arrived safely, and a text from his mother that arrived during their descent, got stuck in traffic. Will be about 30 minutes late. So sorry. He replies to his mother first, assuring her that there's no rush, then sends Mrs. Abernathy a quick confirmation of their safe arrival. His architecture firm can wait until tomorrow. Looks like we have some time to kill, sunshine, he tells Zoe, who's already sprawled on the floor with Ellie, using her backpack as a pillow. Grandma's running a bit late. Can we get a snack? Zoe asks hopefully, looking up at him with the expression he can never refuse. I'm starving. Marcus checks his watch. Sure thing, let's find something to eat while we wait for our bags. They make their way to a nearby cafe within the terminal, one of those airport establishments with overpriced sandwiches and coffee that tastes like it was brewed yesterday. Marcus orders a turkey sandwich for Zoe and coffee for himself, wincing slightly at the cost, but knowing that hungry children and airport waits are a combination best avoided. As they wait for the food, he notices Patricia Winters at a nearby table, struggling one-handed with her phone while holding an ice pack to her shoulder. Paper bag with Mrs. Abernathy's cookies sits untouched beside her. She looks frustrated and in pain, repeatedly trying to make a call that apparently isn't going through. Zoe notices her too. Daddy, the lady from the plane, looks sad. Marcus follows his daughter's gaze. Patricia does indeed look distressed, repeatedly trying to make a call that apparently isn't going through. He hesitates, weighing his options. The woman had been openly racist toward him, yet she's clearly in pain and having difficulty. His instinct to help wars with his perfectly reasonable inclination to maintain distance from someone who had treated him with such disdain. Wait here, sunshine, he says, making a decision that has less to do with Patricia and more to do with the kind of person he wants to be, the kind of person he wants Zoe to become. I'll be right back. He approaches Patricia's table cautiously. Excuse me, Mrs. Winters, is everything all right? Patricia looks up, startled. Recognition flashes across her face, followed by what might be embarrassment. Oh, I'm fine, just trying to reach my daughter. She was supposed to meet me. Phone trouble? Marcus asks, nodding toward her device. The battery is nearly dead and I can't seem to get a signal anyway. Frustration edges her voice. And this blasted shoulder makes everything twice as difficult. Marcus makes a split-second decision. Would you like to use my phone? It's fully charged and I have a good signal. Patricia stares at him, clearly struggling to reconcile his kindness with her earlier behavior. Why would you help me after how I treated you? The question is so direct, so unexpected from someone like her that Marcus finds himself answering with equal honesty. Because my daughter is watching and I want her to see that we don't let other people's mistakes change who we are. There's more to it than that, of course. There's his father's voice in his head saying, they can only diminish you if you let them. There's his mother's teaching that true dignity lies in how you treat those who haven't earned your kindness. There's his own hard-won understanding that holding onto resentment only weighs down the person carrying it. Patricia glances over at Zoe, who waves cheerfully from their table where their food has just been delivered. Something in the older woman's face softens further. I would appreciate using your phone, she says quietly, if the offer still stands. Marcus hands her his smartphone. Of course. As Patricia makes her call, Marcus returns to Zoe, who has already devoured half her sandwich. Is the plain lady okay? She asks around a mouthful of food. She's having a little trouble reaching her family, Marcus explains, taking a sip of his coffee and trying not to grimace at the bitter taste. So I let her borrow my phone. Zoe nods sagely. That's what heroes do, help people even when they're grumpy. Marcus smiles, smoothing a hand over his daughter's braids. Is that right? Ma'am. Ms. Garcia read us a story about it at school. Zoe takes another enormous bite of her sandwich, apparently considering the matter settled. A few minutes later, Patricia approaches their table, holding out Marcus's phone. Thank you, she says, her voice softer than he's heard it before. My daughter's car broke down on the Bay Bridge. She's sending a car service, but it will be about an hour. Would you like to join us? The invitation comes from Zoe before Marcus can speak. We're waiting for Grandma to. Patricia looks startled, her eyes darting to Marcus as if to gauge whether the child's invitation is sanctioned. He gives a small nod. You're welcome to sit with us if you'd like. Might be easier than managing everything one-handed. After a moment's hesitation, Patricia pulls out a chair and sits carefully, positioning her injured shoulder. Thank you, she says again, the word becoming less foreign to her lips with each utterance. An awkward silence falls over the table, broken only by the sounds of Zoe munching happily on her sandwich. Marcus sips his coffee, wondering what cosmic coincidence or divine intervention has led to this improbable scenario, sharing a table with the woman who, less than 3 hours ago, couldn't bear the thought of sitting next to him on a plane. Finally, Patricia speaks. Your daughter is very well-mannered. Thank you, Marcus replies. We work on it every day, don't we, sunshine? Zoe nods enthusiastically. Daddy says manners are like magic words that make the world nicer. Your father is a wise man, Patricia says, her eyes meeting Marcus's briefly before sliding away. He's the bestest daddy ever, Zoe declares with absolute certainty. He reads me 3 stories every night and makes pancakes in funny shapes and knows all about buildings 'cause that's his job. He builds really tall buildings that touch the sky. Is that so? Patricia looks at Marcus with new interest. You're an architect, Marcus nods. Yes, I work for Horizon Designs in Chicago. I've heard of them, Patricia says, genuine surprise in her voice. They designed the new wing of the Art Institute, didn't they? That was my project, actually, Marcus admits, a hint of pride creeping into his voice despite himself. The Art Institute expansion had been his breakthrough project, the one that had cemented his reputation in the field and led to his promotion to partner. We completed it last year. Patricia's eyebrows rise. Impressive. I attended the opening gala. The integration of modern elements with the original structure was quite remarkable. The conversation shifts to architecture, with Patricia revealing an unexpected knowledge of design principles and current trends. Marcus finds himself engaged despite his initial reservations, discussing his philosophy of creating spaces that serve both aesthetic and human needs. So many modern buildings forget that people have to live and work in them, he explains, warming to his subject. I believe architecture should elevate the human experience, not just make a statement. I couldn't agree more, Patricia says, and for the first time she smiles, a genuine expression that transforms her face, softening the hard lines of judgment that had been so prominent on the plane. My late husband collected art but never understood architecture. He saw buildings as investments rather than experiences. And what do you see them as? Marcus asks, genuinely curious about this glimpse of a more thoughtful person beneath the prejudiced exterior. Patricia considers the question seriously. I see them as legacies, physical manifestations of how we want to be remembered. She glances at Zoe, who has finished her sandwich and is now drawing on a napkin with a pen Marcus provided. What we leave for the next generation to inherit. The philosophical turn surprises Marcus. He studies Patricia with new eyes, seeing layers he hadn't expected. Perhaps there's more complexity to this woman than the one-dimensional bigot who had objected to sitting beside him. Where are you watching from? Take a moment to share in the comments below. Your perspective enriches our conversation about human connections that transcend first impressions. Their unexpected dialogue is interrupted by Zoe's excited squeal. Grandma. An elegant black woman in her 70s approaches, her silver-streaked hair styled in a short, chic cut that frames a face marked by intelligence and warmth. She's dressed in a vibrant blue dress with a patterned scarf, projecting the confident style of someone comfortable in her own skin. She opens her arms wide, and Zoe launches herself into the embrace. "There's my sweet girl," she exclaims, lifting Zoe with surprising strength for her age. "My goodness, you've grown 3 inches since Christmas." Evelyn Johnson had been a professor of English literature at Northwestern University for over 30 years before her retirement 5 years ago. The daughter of educators who had participated in the civil rights movement, she had instilled in her son not just a love of learning, but a deep sense of justice and personal dignity. Widowed at 58 when her husband Gerald, a respected orthopedic surgeon, died of a heart attack, she had rebuilt her life with the same determination and grace that characterized everything she did. "Grandma, I made a new friend on the airplane," Zoe announces, pointing to Patricia. "She hurt her arm and we gave her cookies." Marcus stands to hug his mother. "Mom, this is Mrs. Winters. We shared a row on the flight." Evelyn extends her hand to Patricia with the natural grace that has defined her life. "Evelyn Johnson, pleasure to meet you." Patricia takes the offered hand somewhat awkwardly with her good arm. "Patricia Winters, the pleasure is mine." If Evelyn notices anything strained in the interaction, she gives no indication. Years of navigating academia's sometimes treacherous social waters have given her an unflappable demeanor and the ability to put others at ease regardless of circumstances. "Mrs. Winters had an accident during some turbulence," Marcus explains, "and now she's waiting for her ride." Evelyn's sharp eyes take in Patricia's pained posture and the ice pack. "That shoulder needs proper attention. Have you had it looked at?" "I'm sure it's just bruised," Patricia dismisses. Evelyn fixes her with the same look she once used to quell unruly students. "My late husband was an orthopedic surgeon for 40 years. I recognize pain when I see it. That needs an X-ray." Tricia blinks, unused to being addressed so directly by someone she's just met. "My daughter has arranged a car. I'll have it seen to later." Evelyn exchanges a look with Marcus that contains decades of unspoken understanding. He nods slightly, already knowing what his mother is thinking. "We're heading right past the UCSF Medical Center on our way home," Evelyn says decisively. "We can drop you there. They have an excellent urgent care facility." "I couldn't impose," Patricia begins. "It's no imposition," Marcus assures her. "It's on our way, and it would be irresponsible to let you leave without proper medical attention." Caught between pride and practicality, Patricia wavers. The pain in her shoulder has worsened during their conversation, and the prospect of waiting another hour for a car service suddenly seems daunting. "I could text your daughter with the new plan," Marcus offers, sensing her hesitation. "Let her know where to meet you." Finally, Patricia nods. "If you're certain it's not too much trouble." "Not at all," Evelyn assures her. "Now let's collect your luggage and be on our way." As they navigate through the terminal, Evelyn pulling her own small suitcase and holding Zoe's hand, Marcus managing both his bag and Patricia's, an observer might mistake them for longtime friends or even family. The tableau they present defies the tension that had marked the beginning of their journey. A dignified older black woman, a tattooed black man in his 30s, a bubbling 7-year-old girl, and a wealthy white woman in her 60s, moving through the world together, connected by circumstance and small kindnesses. In Evelyn's comfortable SUV, Zoe chatters happily from her car seat, filling her grandmother in on every detail of the flight, including, to Marcus's slight discomfort, the initial confrontation. "And then the lady didn't want to sit by us, and Daddy was very brave and said we didn't do anything wrong," Zoe recounts with the unfiltered honesty of childhood. And then the plane went all bumpy, and a bag fell on her arm, and now we're helping her get a doctor. From the front passenger seat, Patricia stares out the window, her profile rigid. Marcus, sitting beside Zoe in the back, watches her reflection in the side mirror, wondering what thoughts are passing behind that carefully maintained exterior. Is she embarrassed by the child's innocent recounting of her prejudice, regretful, or simply enduring this situation until she can return to her familiar world? Evelyn, ever the educator, uses the moment as a teaching opportunity. You know, Zoe, sometimes when people act unkindly, it's because they're carrying around fears or ideas that aren't true. The brave thing is to recognize when we've been wrong and try to do better. Like when I said I hated broccoli before I tried it? Zoe asks seriously. Evelyn chuckles. Something like that, yes. I was wrong about broccoli, Zoe announces to the car at large. It's actually pretty good with cheese sauce. This unexpected analogy breaks the tension. A small laugh escapes Patricia, quickly stifled but unmistakable. Their eyes meet in the rearview mirror, and Marcus offers a slight smile that Patricia hesitantly returns. Evelyn navigates the San Francisco traffic with the confidence of someone who grew up in the city, pointing out landmarks to Zoe as they drive. There's where your daddy and I used to get ice cream when he was a little boy, she explains, indicating a small shop on a corner. And that park is where he learned to ride his bicycle. Did he fall down a lot? Zoe asks. Only once, Evelyn says. But it was quite spectacular, right into a rose bush. Mom, Marcus groans, is that really necessary information? Absolutely essential, Evelyn replies with a wink at Patricia. Grandmothers are the keepers of embarrassing childhood stories. It's in the job description. This glimpse into their family dynamic, the easy banter, the shared history, the obvious affection, creates yet another crack in Patricia's perceptions. These people contradict everything she's been taught to believe about those different from herself. Their warmth and normalcy challenge a lifetime of assumptions. At the UCSF Medical Center, Marcus helps Patricia check in while Evelyn entertains Zoe in the waiting area. The intake nurse takes one look at Patricia's now swollen shoulder and expedites her case. They'll see you soon, Marcus informs her. We'll wait with you if that's all right. You've already done more than enough, Patricia protests weakly. We're not in any rush, he assures her, and Zoe would never forgive me if we left before knowing you were okay. They sit together in the waiting room, an unlikely quartet. Zoe, apparently tireless despite the long day of travel, engages Patricia in conversation about her stuffed elephant's extensive medical history. Ellie had a broken trunk last year, she explains seriously. Daddy performed surgery with needle and thread. He sounds like a very skilled doctor, Patricia replies, her voice warming as she speaks to the child. He's the best at everything, Zoe states with absolute confidence. Except cooking spaghetti, he always makes it too mushy. Marcus laughs, shaking his head. Thanks for the vote of confidence, sunshine. Well, nobody's perfect, Evelyn says with a wink at her son. Even your father burned toast regularly, and he was the most capable man I've ever known. The mention of Marcus's father brings a momentary shadow to his face, a grief that, while softened by time, never truly fades. Patricia notices her own expression shifting subtly. You were close to your father, she asks quietly. Marcus nods. He passed away when I was in college. Heart attack. It was unexpected. I'm sorry, Patricia says, and the simple words carry a weight of genuine empathy that surprises him. Losing a spouse is difficult enough. I can't imagine losing a parent so young. Gerald was only 62, Evelyn adds, her voice softening with memory. Too young to leave us, but he lived fully while he was here, no regrets. That's important, Patricia murmurs. No regrets. The conversation pauses as a nurse calls Patricia's name. She stands, wincing slightly. That's me. We'll be right here, Evelyn assures her. As Patricia follows the nurse, Marcus finds himself reflecting on the strange turns this day has taken. This morning, he would never have imagined spending his afternoon in a San Francisco hospital waiting room for a woman who had openly insulted him hours earlier. Life, he thinks, has a peculiar way of challenging our expectations. She's not what I expected, Evelyn says quietly once Patricia is out of earshot, her perceptive eyes studying her son. No, Marcus agrees. She's not. People rarely are when we take the time to see past our initial impressions. Evelyn's gaze turns thoughtful. I spent 40 years teaching students to look beneath the surface of characters in literature. It's a lesson that applies equally well to real life. Even when the surface is pretty ugly, Marcus asks, thinking of Patricia's initial behavior. Especially then, Evelyn replies, the most interesting stories often begin with characters who seem irredeemable. Nearly an hour passes before Patricia returns, her arm now in a sling. Her expression is a mix of discomfort and resignation. Hairline fracture, she announces. They want me to see an orthopedist in a few days for follow-up. I knew it, Evelyn says with the satisfaction of someone whose intuition has been validated. How are you getting home? You can't manage luggage one-handed. Patricia sighs. My daughter is sending a car to take me to her house in Pacific Heights. I was supposed to stay at the Four Seasons, but the doctor advised against being alone. When is the car coming? Marcus asks, checking his watch. About 20 minutes. Evelyn stands decisively. Then we'll wait with you and make sure you're safely on your way before we leave. Patricia looks at each of them in turn, Evelyn with her quiet authority, Marcus with his steady presence, and Zoe who is now curled up against her father's side, fighting sleep after the excitement of the day. Something in Patricia's carefully constructed facade cracks a little further. I don't deserve your kindness, she says softly, the words clearly difficult for her. Especially after how I behaved on the plane. Evelyn places a gentle hand on Patricia's good shoulder. Deserving has nothing to do with it. Kindness isn't earned, it's given. Besides, Marcus adds, today has been a lesson for all of us, I think. What kind of lesson, Daddy? Zoe asks sleepily, proving she wasn't as close to dreamland as she appeared. Marcus smiles down at his daughter. That people are more than what they first seem. And that sometimes, the hardest journeys bring unexpected friends. Patricia meets his gaze, a world of unspoken understanding passing between them. Indeed they do, she murmurs. When the car arrives, Marcus helps load Patricia's luggage into the trunk while Evelyn ensures the driver understands Patricia's condition and destination. Zoe, now fully awake again, presents Patricia with a crayon drawing she's been working on during their wait, a somewhat abstract rendering of 4 people holding hands beneath a yellow sun. That's you and me and Daddy and Grandma, she explains, pointing to each figure in turn. So you remember us when your arm gets better. Patricia accepts the drawing carefully as if it's a priceless artifact. Thank you, Zoe, I'll treasure this. As she's about to enter the car, Patricia turns to Marcus. I realize I never actually apologized properly, she says, her voice steadier now. I'm sorry for my behavior earlier, it was inexcusable. Apology accepted, Marcus says simply. Safe travels, Mrs. Winters. Patricia, she corrects him. Please call me Patricia. With that, she slides into the car, and they watch as it pulls away from the curb, carrying Patricia Winters toward her daughter's home and whatever revelations await her there. The Johnson family makes their way to Evelyn's car, Zoe skipping ahead despite her earlier fatigue. As Marcus helps his mother into the driver's seat, she gives him an appraising look. You handled that situation with remarkable grace, she says. Your father would have been proud. Marcus smiles, feeling the weight he's been carrying for months shift slightly. I learned from the best. Indeed you did, Evelyn agrees with a laugh. Now let's get home. I have chocolate chip cookies with gooey centers waiting for a certain young lady. Zoe cheers from the backseat, and as they drive away from the hospital toward Evelyn's Oakland home, Marcus feels a sense of peace that has eluded him since Aisha's departure. Today has reminded him that connections can form in the most unexpected places, that healing can begin in small moments of kindness, and that the journey forward, however uncertain, is one he and Zoe can navigate together. Before you see how this ends, make sure you're subscribed to our channel so you don't miss other stories about unexpected human connections that transform lives. 2 days later, Marcus sits on his mother's back porch, watching Zoe help Evelyn tend to her prized rose garden. The afternoon sun casts a golden light over the scene, highlighting the silver in his mother's hair and the colorful beads in Zoe's braids. He takes a photo with his phone, wanting to capture this moment of simple joy. Evelyn's home in Oakland is a Victorian-era house she and Gerald had purchased as a young couple and lovingly restored over decades. The backyard is her pride and joy, a meticulously maintained garden featuring roses of every color, a small koi pond, and a cherry tree that blooms spectacularly each spring. It's a place of peace, a sanctuary that has helped heal both mother and son through difficult times. The divorce papers remain in his suitcase unsigned. Yesterday's call with Aisha had been surprisingly civil. She'd agreed to couples counseling when they returned to Chicago, a small step but more than he'd dared hope for. Whether their marriage can be saved remains uncertain, but for the first time in months the possibility exists. The conversation had started awkwardly, with Aisha's usual distant tone gradually warming as they spoke. "How's Zoe?" she had asked, genuine concern in her voice. "She misses you," Marcus had replied simply. "We both do." A long silence had followed, then Aisha's voice, suddenly thick with emotion. "I miss you too, both of you. I needed space to figure things out." "And have you figured things out?" Another pause. Not entirely, but I know I don't want to lose our family without trying everything possible to save it. Those words, our family, had kindled a cautious hope in Marcus's heart. They had agreed to start with counseling when he and Zoe returned to Chicago next week. Small steps toward possible reconciliation. His phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Johnson, this is Patricia Winters. Your mother gave me your number. I hope that's all right. I wanted to let you know that I'm doing well and to thank you again for your kindness. Would you and your family be available for dinner tomorrow evening? My daughter Caroline would like to meet you all. Marcus reads the message twice, surprised but not entirely shocked. Something had shifted during their brief connection, something significant enough that this invitation feels like a natural progression rather than an oddity. He shows the text to his mother, who reads it with raised eyebrows. Well, well, she murmurs, people can surprise you. Should I accept? Marcus asks. Evelyn considers for a moment, watching Zoe carefully place mulch around a rosebush. Do you want to? It's a good question. Does he want to continue this unexpected connection? Their encounter had begun with explicit prejudice. Is he obligated to forgive and build bridges? Or would it be perfectly reasonable to politely decline and move on? Marcus watches Zoe carefully placing mulch around a rosebush, her small face screwed up in concentration. She works with a focused determination that reminds him so much of himself at that age, the same attention to detail, the same desire to get things exactly right. I think I do, he says finally. For Zoe, if nothing else. To show her that bridges can be built in the most unlikely places. Not just for Zoe, Evelyn observes shrewdly. For yourself too, and perhaps for Patricia Winters as well. Marcus nods, acknowledging the truth in his mother's words. Perhaps this is part of his own healing process, learning to navigate complex human connections rather than withdrawing into the safety of familiar relationships. Perhaps it's an opportunity to practice the forgiveness he hopes to receive from Aisha. Or perhaps it's simply the right thing to do to allow someone the space to grow beyond their worst moments. He types a reply, Hello, Patricia. Glad to hear you're doing well. We'd be happy to join you for dinner tomorrow. Just let us know when and where. Looking forward to meeting your daughter. The response comes almost immediately. Wonderful. Caroline is excited to meet you all. She runs a nonprofit focused on educational equity in underserved communities. Your mother mentioned you're an architect. Caroline has been looking for someone to consult on a community center project. Perhaps a fortunate coincidence. Marcus shows the text to his mother, who smiles knowingly. Coincidence indeed, she says, or perhaps something more intentional. What do you mean? I mean that sometimes the universe puts people in our paths for reasons we don't immediately understand, Evelyn explains. Your father used to say there are no random encounters, only opportunities we haven't recognized yet. Marcus considers this. His father had been a spiritual man who believed in purpose and meaning beyond coincidence. Marcus himself tends toward pragmatism, but there is something about this unlikely connection with Patricia Winters that feels guided by more than chance. The next evening, as the Johnson family arrives at Caroline Winters' elegant Pacific Heights home, Marcus reflects on the strange path that has led them here. From a tense confrontation on a plane to a dinner that might lead to professional collaboration, and perhaps even friendship, life's trajectory can change in an instant, for better or worse. Caroline's home is a beautifully restored Edwardian with large windows and a stunning view of the bay. As they approach the front door, Zoe tugs on Marcus's hand. Is this a palace, Daddy? He laughs. Not quite, but close. Patricia greets them at the door, her arm still in a sling, but her demeanor transformed from their first meeting. Gone is the cold haughtiness, replaced by a genuine warmth that reaches her eyes. Beside her stands a younger woman with her mother's elegant features but a more open expression, Caroline, presumably. Marcus, Evelyn, Zoe, welcome, Patricia says, gesturing them inside. This is my daughter, Caroline. Caroline steps forward, extending her hand first to Marcus. She's in her early 40s with intelligent eyes and an energetic presence that fills the entryway. I've heard so much about you all. Thank you for helping my mother when she needed it. We were happy to help, Marcus replies, shaking her hand. Zoe tugs on Caroline's sleeve. Is your mommy's arm getting better? I drew her a picture to make it feel good. Caroline kneels to Zoe's level, her smile widening. Yes, it is getting better. And did you know? She has your picture framed in her room. She says it's better than any medicine. Zoe beams with pride, and Marcus feels a surge of affection for this woman who acknowledges his daughter so naturally. Caroline's ease with Zoe speaks to a genuine warmth that transcends social performance. Please come in, Caroline says, leading them into a spacious living room where appetizers and drinks have been arranged. Mom's told me what an extraordinary coincidence your meeting was. Marcus catches Patricia's eye, noting that she's apparently omitted the less flattering details of their initial encounter. But Patricia shakes her head slightly, surprising him. Not the whole story yet, Patricia says to her daughter. But I will. The evening unfolds with surprising ease, conversation flowing, connections forming, laughter filling the rooms of Caroline's home. As they share a meal around a beautifully set table, Marcus observes Patricia interacting with his mother, noting how two women from such different backgrounds have found common ground in their love of literature and gardening. You must see Mom's rose garden before you leave San Francisco, Patricia tells Evelyn. Her Pacific Heights Garden Club has won awards, but she's too modest to mention it. I'd love to, Evelyn replies warmly. Perhaps we could exchange cuttings. I have a climbing variety that might do beautifully on your western wall. Caroline explains her nonprofit work with passion, detailing the community center project she hopes Marcus might consult on. We've secured an old warehouse in the Mission District. The bones are good, but we need someone who understands that architecture is about more than buildings. It's about creating spaces where people can thrive. That's exactly my philosophy, Marcus says, genuinely intrigued by the project. I'd be honored to take a look at your plans. The foundation is providing initial funding, Patricia adds, surprising Marcus. Caroline has convinced me to redirect our focus toward more inclusive initiatives. The way she emphasizes inclusive suggests this represents a significant shift in her thinking, perhaps one catalyzed by their chance encounter. As the evening winds down, Patricia pulls Marcus aside while Caroline shows Evelyn and Zoe her collection of art from local San Francisco artists. They stand in Caroline's study, surrounded by books and photographs documenting her humanitarian work around the world. I owe you an explanation, Patricia says quietly. For how I behaved on the plane, Marcus shakes his head. You don't owe me anything. I do, Patricia insists. Not for your forgiveness, you've already given that, generous as you are, but for my own accountability. She takes a deep breath. I was raised with certain prejudices. My late husband reinforced them. For most of my life, I've existed in a bubble of privilege and ignorance, never questioning the biases I inherited. She glances toward her daughter, her expression softening. Caroline has been trying to open my eyes for years. This weekend, she finally succeeded. Meeting you and your family, experiencing your kindness despite my behavior, it forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about myself. Marcus listens silently, recognizing the courage this confession requires. I'm 71 years old, Patricia continues. Some might say too old to change, but that's just an excuse, isn't it? We're never too old to become better versions of ourselves. No, Marcus agrees softly. We're not. Patricia's eyes are bright with unshed tears. I won't pretend that one epiphany erases a lifetime of harmful thinking, but I want you to know that I'm trying. The foundation my husband established, I'm working with Caroline to redirect its focus to support students from all backgrounds, not just those who fit my husband's narrow definition of deserving. That's significant, Marcus says, genuinely impressed. It's a start, Patricia replies. A small step toward making amends. From across the room, Zoe's laughter rings out as Caroline shows her how to do a twirling dance move. The sound bridges the space between past and future, between what was and what might be. Sometimes, Marcus says thoughtfully, the most important journeys begin with a difficult flight. Patricia smiles, understanding the metaphor. Indeed they do, Marcus, indeed they do. As the evening comes to a close and goodbyes are exchanged, promises are made to stay in touch. Caroline and Marcus arrange to meet professionally to discuss the community center project. Evelyn invites both Winter's women to visit her garden when Patricia's shoulder has healed. Zoe extracts a solemn promise from Caroline to teach her more dance moves next time. In the car heading back to Evelyn's house, Zoe yawns widely from her car seat. I like our new friends, Daddy. Marcus meets his mother's knowing gaze briefly before responding. Me too, sunshine, me too. And guess what? Zoe continues, her voice growing sleepy. Ms. Caroline says I can help with the community center. She says they need kid experts to make sure it's good for everyone. That sounds like a perfect job for you, Marcus agrees, his heart full. As Zoe drifts off to sleep, Marcus reflects on the extraordinary chain of events that began with a confrontation on a plane and has led to new friendships, professional opportunities, and personal growth, not just for Patricia Winters, but for himself as well. The next morning, Marcus receives a call from Aisha. The sound of her voice, once so familiar, now carrying the distance of months apart, sends a complicated wave of emotions through him. How's San Francisco? She asks, her tone cautious but warmer than in previous conversations. Beautiful as always, he replies. Mom's garden is in full bloom. Zoe's been helping her deadhead roses. I can picture it, Aisha says softly. That cherry tree must be spectacular right now. It is. A pause then. Marcus, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about what went wrong. He waits, heart pounding. I ran away from our problems instead of facing them, she continues. I told myself I needed space to figure things out, but the truth is I was scared. Scared of failing as a wife, as a mother, scared of the responsibility. We were both struggling, Marcus acknowledges. I threw myself into work instead of talking about what was happening between us. I miss you, Aisha says, her voice breaking slightly. I miss Zoe, I miss our life. We miss you too, Marcus replies, allowing himself to hope. But we can't just go back to how things were. We need to build something stronger. I know, she agrees. That's why I've already set up our first counseling appointment for next week, if you're still willing. I am, he confirms. We owe it to ourselves and to Zoe to try. After the call ends, Marcus finds his mother in the garden, Zoe helping her water the flowers. He shares the news of Aisha's call, and Evelyn embraces him tightly. Life has a way of coming full circle, she says. When one door closes, another opens. And sometimes what we need comes from the most unexpected places, Marcus adds, thinking of Patricia and Caroline, of chance encounters and second chances. Later that afternoon, they meet Caroline at the warehouse that will become the community center. The space is vast and empty now, with high ceilings, large windows, and endless possibilities. As Marcus walks through it, his architect's mind already envisioning what it could become, Zoe runs ahead, her voice echoing in the empty space. Daddy. My voice sounds giant in here, Caroline laughs. That's exactly the energy we want to capture, that sense of possibility and wonder. Marcus nods, already sketching ideas on a pad. I'm thinking open spaces here with smaller areas for specific activities, natural light, sustainable materials, flexible configurations that can adapt as the community's needs evolve. Perfect, Caroline agrees. This needs to be a living space, not a monument. As they discuss the project, Patricia arrives, her arms still in a sling but her eyes bright with interest. What do you think? She asks Marcus. Can you work with this space? Absolutely, he confirms. It has great bones and enormous potential. Like people, Patricia says thoughtfully. Sometimes all they need is someone who can see past the current limitations to what they might become. The parallel isn't lost on any of them. In this empty warehouse, with its history and future stretching before and after this moment, 4 people from vastly different backgrounds stand united by a common vision of spaces where people can thrive, of second chances, of bridges built where barriers once stood. A week later, back in Chicago, Marcus sits in a therapist's office, Aisha beside him. The distance between them on the couch feels vast yet crossable, a gap that might, with work and willingness, be bridged. The divorce papers remain unsigned, tucked away in a drawer at home. Before we begin, the therapist says, I'd like each of you to share what brings you here today. What do you hope to achieve through counseling? Aisha speaks first, her voice steady despite the emotion visible in her eyes. I want to find our way back to each other, to remember why we chose each other in the first place. Marcus nods. I want to build something stronger than what we had before, something that can weather storms without breaking. As they begin the difficult work of rebuilding their relationship, Marcus carries with him the lessons of Flight 2187. That people can change, that connections can form in unlikely places, that judgment can give way to understanding when we allow ourselves to see beyond first impressions. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Patricia Winters stands before the board of the Winters Family Foundation, presenting a revised mission statement that expands their focus to include students from all backgrounds, with special emphasis on those from underserved communities. The proposal faces resistance from some long-standing board members who shared her late husband's narrow vision, but Patricia stands firm. For too long, we've limited our impact by limiting our vision, she tells them. I've recently had experiences that have opened my eyes to the potential we're wasting by maintaining these artificial barriers. Caroline watches her mother with pride and astonishment, seeing the transformation that began with a chance encounter on an airplane continuing to unfold in meaningful ways. 6 months later, ground is broken on the Mission District Community Center. Marcus flies to San Francisco for the ceremony, bringing Zoe and, significantly, Aisha. Their marriage remains a work in progress, with steps forward and occasional steps back, but they are finding their way toward a new understanding. At the groundbreaking, Zoe proudly turns a ceremonial shovelful of dirt alongside Caroline and Patricia. The crowd applauds as the child beams, unaware of the complex journey that led to this moment. "She's beautiful," Patricia says to Marcus and Aisha. "You must be very proud." "We are," Aisha replies, her hand finding Marcus's. "Of her and of this project. Thank you for including us in this." "Thank you for designing it," Caroline says to Marcus. "Your vision is exactly what this community needs." As speeches are made and photographs taken, Marcus reflects on the extraordinary chain of events that began with a confrontation and has led to creation of a community center, of new friendships, of rebuilt relationships. The journey from row 17 of Flight 2187 to this moment has been unpredictable and transformative. Life rarely follows a straight path. Sometimes it takes unexpected turbulence to redirect us toward destinations we never imagined, places of greater understanding, deeper connection, and unexpected joy. And as Flight 2187 proved, even the most difficult beginnings can lead to the most meaningful journeys. Let us know in the comments below. Your perspective adds to this important conversation about overcoming prejudice through compassion and understanding.